This is Actualize Freedom, straight talk on growing clicks and conversions on Amazon FBA from people doing it every day. Now here's your host, digital marketing acrobat, Danny Kenji Carlson.
Today's episode of the Actualize Freedom Podcast is sponsored by the new e-commerce podcast, The E-Commerce Leader, giving big thinking for small business. It's designed for e-commerce leaders eager to grow and protect their business. It's co-hosted by Jason Miles, Shopify store owner and educator, and Michael Veazey, an Amazon specialist. Just search for The E-Commerce Leader in your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. Hey guys, so this one's going to be really interesting with Anthony Cofrancesco. He actually is one of the masterminds behind Virtuous Graphics, which it's a company that now sold to another company that used to be big in the space of creating images and graphics for Amazon sellers. And he's now taken that experience and moved it over to Pickfu, which some of you guys know is a company for split testing. So that's what Anthony's really been working on super hard for the past several months here, is just getting a really good framework for what it makes sense to split test on Amazon, how you can actually split test and get the data you need before you even launch your product so you can launch with the best performing products. So let's dive into this one with Anthony Cofrancesco. What's up, guys? Danny Carlson here with the Actualize Freedom Podcast. And today we are going to be talking about something that everyone understands, the kind of real basic concept of it, but very few Amazon sellers really are doing this properly or really have any actual real data to operate on. And this is something that makes such a big difference because, as anyone who knows the numbers when it comes to conversion rates and click-through rates, you increase those by even just like half of a percentage. A lot of the time, it can mean thousands of dollars per month to your bottom line. So we have here Anthony Cofrancesco, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, to talk about how do we actually get really good data for creating your listings better and improving those click-through rates and improving the conversion rates so that you can really just come out of the gate and start smashing it with your product. So welcome to the podcast, Anthony. How's it going?
Yeah, Danny, thanks so much for having me on. I've been watching for a while, and it's really exciting to be here. I'm also glad that we're talking about conversion optimization. There's a lot of other topics I think that get a lot of they're highlighted often and people are talking about them all the time, but conversion optimization, especially from a visual standpoint, some people talk a little bit about the copywriting side, writing your title, your bullet points, and your description. But the visual side is really important, and I'm happy to be here and chatting with you to chat about it.
Heck yeah, man. Well, first let's just jump into kind of your background when it comes to this stuff, because you have a very diverse background, very specifically when it comes to this topic about conversion rate optimization. So talk about how you came to know so much about this particular topic.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would start off with saying is that, my background actually came from the very start from a corporate background. I was working at a large telco company in the US called Verizon. I thought I wanted to be the next big CFO of America. And I ended up working for Amazon for about a year before I quit my job, and I moved out to the Philippines to help scale a creative agency. Now, the reason I talk a little bit about the corporate background there is because I never considered myself to be a really creative person. I never really thought that I really understood anything about graphic design or photography or anything like that. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of relate to. But when I quit my job at Amazon and I moved out to the Philippines, I was helping with a company called Virtuous Graphics. And back then it was a very small company, just a few employees, kind of everyone shooting at their home. And it was kind of my job to come in and help build and scale and grow that company. And we did that for almost 2.5 years before we exited the business. And that really focused predominantly on conversion optimization for Amazon sellers. So we did everything from photography, graphic design, copywriting, and video. Very, very similar, if not identical. I think Kenji offers a few more services. You guys do some PPC management and do a really great job. But yeah, it's really, that was kind of my experience and background for about 2 years. And I kind of bring the creativity thing into it because I think a lot of Amazon sellers, one of the problems that they run into is that they know that they want a good listing, but the best advice that they're giving to their agencies or to their own freelancers is go look at my competitors and just do it better. And it's very interesting over time. You kind of build up a framework for just like anything. The more you learn about a topic, I definitely wasn't an expert when I started, but now you know what looks good and you can give specific examples and ideas to your creative team to get really good assets. But yeah, sorry, I was rambling a bit.
Oh, no worries. And this segues really well into what you're doing right now. So the company that you're with right now is just very focused on the actual data side of things, right? Like Virtual Graphics was, all about how do you actually create the things that are beautiful, but what about the information that you're using to figure out what is the right thing to create, right? Because what might look beautiful to the brand owner maybe is not actually what looks right to the customers.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that everyone's always going to run into. It's you obviously have your own personal ideas about what looks good. Your business partner might have an idea of what looks good. The customer, it's all very different, and people can have different opinions. So Pickfu actually, the company that I'm working for now, it kind of started a little bit out of that need, out of that desire. So the two guys who started the company, Justin and John, as many of you probably have been in this situation before, you're designing your website, you're coming up with your branding, and you're saying, hey, I like this. And the other guy's like, well, I kind of like this better. How do you decide, right? And with a lot of these situations, it's not just, hey, you're going to put a logo and it's going to go on one place. This is going to go all over your social. It's going to go on your packaging, all of these different things. And so the whole reason Pickfu was started was really wanting to kind of get some more feedback rather than just going with your gut on something that's going to take up a lot of time and effort, but also a lot of money. Pickfu is kind of a tool that you could get feedback very, very quickly on some of those creative assets. So you didn't just have to go with what you thought. You could get a little bit of feedback from customers and get an idea for what actually will perform and look good.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And like a lot of people, they would go the route of conversion rate optimization after the fact, right? They launch their product and they try to split test the main image, for example, and that's probably a good practice to be doing. But what do you think about before the listing is actually created? Like, what is the best way to go about coming up with the right information to then be the basis for the entire listing creation?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of with anything, right? At Pickfu, we've had a lot of different consultants come in from a lot of big companies. And one of the consistent trends that we see for companies, what they keep saying over and over again is when they launch a product, imagine this, right? Like, so if Nike's going to launch a new fitness band, right? You might hear of a product failing, right? But it never gets to the point where they just don't sell their inventory, right? They might have to discount it 25, 50%. They might have to go through different liquidation options, but the product itself is never going to fail. And the reason why is because they put so much time and effort and money on the early stage of understanding what people are looking for in terms of the product, in terms of the design, in terms of the branding, that it really, really drastically reduces the amount of risk that actually happens by the time they get to the point of a launch. And so where a lot of sellers go wrong is that they don't do enough work up front with trying to identify where they might get beaten on their brands or on the product design. And so a really good way to actually start is, we spend so much time on product research. You're using Helium 10, you're finding what other competitors might be selling similar products. What are the advantages, pros and cons of their products? Very few people will go in and actually look at the images from the start and say, hey, how can we go in? I can already look at the different graphics and the different lifestyle images and come and get an idea for how they can beat them from that standpoint before they even launch the product.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart way to go about that. So in actual practical terms, what do you recommend people do? Like, do you recommend that people just go and open up a bunch of competitor Amazon listings and check out the reviews, or what's the actual process to be figuring this kind of stuff out?
Yeah, so first and foremost is once you identify a product that you want to sell, you definitely want to look within the direct competitors, right? And so you want to see what are other people doing for their image set, how competitive are they in terms of their lifestyle images, their A+ content, and different things like that. But where a lot of people will fall short is they only look at things in terms of their direct competition for the exact product. And so the problem there is there's always going to be a ceiling for most products, unless you're selling in a very competitive niche, maybe an electronics niche where people are putting a lot of money, or supplements where they're putting a lot of money into their branding and advertising. What you want to do is you want to also look at other product categories. So something that we've actually found, and we've seen some of our larger power users actually doing this is they won't go apples to apples and try to create ideas for the creative assets just looking at their direct competitors. They'll look in a similar product category. So imagine if you're trying to sell like a fitness resistance band. I'm sure you're familiar with the product. What a lot of people would do is they would say, I'm going to go and research in terms of getting inspirations and ideas for my listing from a visual standpoint. I'm going to look at all of the best people selling those resistance bands. But what is probably a smarter way of doing it is you think about, okay, who are the best when it comes to creating assets around fitness products? Who is doing the best job of that? Maybe it's Nike, maybe it's Under Armour. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look at, I know that Nike and Under Armour might not sell resistance bands. It might not be the same product, but I'm going to look for other fitness accessories and think about how they're positioning their lifestyle images, or what kind of infographics are they trying to build. And rather than going on Amazon, which is a very tight bubble because everyone tries to copy each other, you go and look beyond and see what are the actual major national brands doing. I do this a lot as well. I actually subscribe to a lot of print magazines. So if I'm looking at a lifestyle, if I'm trying to do a lifestyle or infographics for a home goods product, I'll go get the Modern Living catalog and I'm going to flip through and I'm going to get inspiration. And then rather than just going to my designer and saying, hey, here's my competitor listing, go try to make it better, I'm going to say, hey, here's this beautiful kitchen. Why don't we Photoshop the product into this kitchen, and then we're going to kind of run a test to see, even with the Photoshopped image, against some of the best competitor images to give a standpoint of whether it's photo creative direction or graphics creative direction.
Yeah, such a good point you have there with Amazon just being such a narrow window of the entire market as a whole. Like, a lot of these offline brands are spending, $2,000 to $6,000 on any given photo shoot. And the quality of these images is going to be a lot better than the average Amazon seller on there, who just kind of whatever images they have laying around, or maybe they paid $500 to get someone to Photoshop some products in there. And the best competitors are spending so much time and money on this that it's probably a really great place to learn from. So let's say that we have a bunch of these competitor images, and how do we know which one of these are going to perform the best? Like, let's use the example of a main image. So if we want the main image that is going to be really high performing, what we probably should not do is just copy what everyone else is doing, because that's what everyone else is doing, and that creates the opportunity for creating something different. What should we be doing instead if we want a main image that's just really going to outperform everyone else's?
Yeah, so one thing I want to clarify on main images, because I've watched pretty much every talk there is on conversion optimization. I've been chatting about it for a while, for a couple of years now. And if you watch the major courses, so if you watch like Project X, and I've watched Kevin King talk and other people, they advise that with main images, you stick really, really to what the TOS says, which is just the product on a white background. Now, one thing I really want to clarify, and this is coming from a little bit of the experience coming from Amazon. I would never go and encourage anyone to break TOS, right? But at the end of the day, I know that a lot of people are going to play within that gray area because they scroll down page one of their relevant search results and they see 50% of the other competitors that are either putting props in there, they're putting models in there, and they're doing things that are technically against TOS. You'll even see in Amazon's brands that Amazon owns, there's a company that actually makes accessories for the bed. So it's like duvet covers and sheet covers and things like that. And you can see their own brands will clearly break the TOS, because you don't want to, if you're showing a duvet cover, for example, you don't just want to show this white sheet that's floating on a white background. It makes way more sense if you show it on a bed. And so one quick thing I'll say, and then I'll give some actual recommendations for what to do with the main image. Think about like what Amazon's trying to do. They're trying to be the most customer-centric company in the world. And so you got to think, what can you do that's going to make the buying decision better for the customer? It's going to make the customer experience smoother, more intuitive. What Amazon's really trying to avoid is they're selling all of these different products from A to Z, any kind of product you can possibly imagine they sell on Amazon. And what they don't want you to do is they don't want you to put something that is misleading or scammy or something that's going to bring someone's eyeballs to the listing, but it's not actually going to add any value to the customer. So so think about, if you are going to walk this gray area, think about, is what I'm doing. Am I putting a decal in there just to add a pop of color so that I'm hoping I'm going to have a higher click-through rate from page one actually into my listing? Or am I actually giving the customer helpful information? So I'm going to give a few examples here. Number one is showing the product in use. I was building a slide presentation the other day, and a product that I came across, which is a great example of this, is an apple peeler. So imagine you put the apple on it, it spins around and it kind of peels off the exterior of the apple, right? If I just see this product, it could be anything. This could be like a press that you're going to use in a workshop. It could be a number of different things. But when I see the apple on there and there's very visually peeling the skin coming off in this kind of coil that's coming off, it's very clear right off the bat. I know what the product is. I know what it does. I don't have to guess. Another good example is there was this cereal bowl, and it's the silliest product that I've ever seen, but essentially it's a bowl that has two little sections in it, two divided sections, and in one side you put your cereal and the other you put your milk. And the whole point is now your cereal won't get soggy. You go and you scoop up the cereal, you dip it in the milk, and then you eat it, right? That product would make absolutely no sense unless you see the cereal on one half of the bowl and the milk on the other half. So from a customer standpoint, Amazon might say, hey, we want the product by itself with no props on a white background, versus, hey, show it with the cereal and then with the milk. And now someone's going to know, they're not going to get confused. Another really good example of this is with color options. So the other day I was looking at a product. These are all, these are not our client products. I just go and search products all day trying to come up with content for my presentations, and I came across the full face snorkel masks. I'm sure you've seen them before. And so this is an example where showing the different color variations from the first page is actually very relevant, because a lot of people, when they buy that, if they're spending $50, $60 on a full face snorkel mask, if they don't see a color that they want, they might not even want to buy the product, and they're just going to bounce anyway. So if I can put a really, really small decal, nothing obtrusive or distracting, and I can very quickly see, oh, that's the green color. I love green. That's really vibrant, really cool. I want to wear that. That's something that's helpful to the customer, right? And it's also something that wouldn't really make sense to put in your title. You're limited on characters, and it wouldn't really make sense to say full face snorkel mask. You want to focus on your features, not full face snorkel mask, bright green, bright blue, red. Like, it wouldn't make sense. And one more thing I'll say too is, like, back in the day, and this is just different on different Seller Central accounts that you have and where you read it. The old language in the TOS for main images literally used to say word for word that you can use props and models as long as they're not gratuitous or distracting. So as long as what you're trying to do actually does lead the customer to make a smarter buying decision, then it's good. A couple other things is, obviously you can change the layout, right? You can adjust how things are organized. So rather than putting things just completely in a square, you can put things in different shapes. Now, back in the day, people might try to, if you're selling batteries, right? You're selling a 16 pack of batteries. Some people might actually try to spell out the word battery. For me, that's a little bit distracting. I would probably go with the standpoint of just trying to make something that's aesthetically pleasing, try to fill up the full frame of the shot and try to make it look good.
Yeah, and there's one thing I see all the time that people do is with product packaging. So very commonly, people will use their product packaging as the main image. So I saw one the other day it was like some type of blanket or poncho or something like that. And in no place in their main image did it actually show this blanket, except inside of the packaging. It's very unclear what the product actually is. And people, if you're seeing a little thumbnail image on the search results page, you're not going to be able to read what's on the packaging very clearly at all. So it's like you're just leaving it up to the job of the title, when the job really should be done by the main image if it can. Most people are much more visually inclined and get that information from there. So I think that's really, really smart what you pointed out. Next, I want to kind of touch on something really interesting here. So this is something that you and I have been talking about kind of in the background, about getting a really intensive study going on when it comes to what actually works when it comes to the Amazon listings. So, I mean, there's lots of best practices out there, like in Kevin King's course and all these other courses, they'll say these things, but a lot of these things are not backed up with any real data. Like they work for the sellers who are doing them, but just because it like actually is working for them doesn't mean that that's the thing that's making it work, right? So when it comes to data, I want you to talk a little bit about this project that we're going to be working on to bring together like a lot of different data and actually show people what really works, like if there are any truths in the data.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is it's not necessarily in my mind that the things that people are doing right now, it's not that I don't think that they don't work. What I think it's a little bit more of is if you look around Amazon, for example, there's some brands, and there's no doubt about this, there's some brands that are doing incredibly well. And if you compare the images and the assets that they're working with on the listing, they're nothing that would rock your socks. In fact, some of the most successful listings I've seen in terms of conversion rate have graphics and images that are just very, 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 very simple, right? Actually, I've been watching talks before where people were saying instead of infographics, they would literally just go onto Fiverr and hire someone to draw a cartoon, like a before and after cartoon, and completely forego the lifestyle images. The thing is, at the end of the day, what seems to work the best right now on Amazon is sending a very, very clear message, right? Whether it's a before and after, this is how your life is going to change with the product. Here's what the feature is, here's what the benefit, and here's the impact on your life. The question that I've had for a while is, if you can send a very, very clear message and it really does convert, and you can do that from someone drawing a cartoon, how could you still send that same clear message, but then up the visual appeal and the visual quality while still conveying that same message? And so the thing that I'm really, really interested in doing is, and I think we've talked a lot about this, is working with a creative agency that really understands the one half of it, which is the conversion optimization, sending that clear message, helping the customer to overcome their objections rather. But how can we do that in the most visually appealing way possible and really show people what that looks like? Because my hypothesis is that if you would, the messaging is what's important, where a lot of people have gone wrong in the past. And the reason that, Kenji, for example, is going to stand out from maybe a professional photographer that's been doing this for 30 years, and they've been, they shoot weddings and all of these different things, and they're really good with the camera, is they don't know what sells on Amazon. They don't know what works in an e-commerce environment. And so you really have to bring those two together. And I think up until this point, you have agencies that really understand one half of it, and maybe the stuff looks really, really good, but combining it, like, how can we have the highest visual quality work with the basis of what actually converts and what's going to drive the customer towards a buying decision?
Yeah, I think that's so important. That's originally how the Kenji ROI agency started. It was when I was getting my first Amazon products up and running. It was a big job to really find a product photographer and then give them the instructions that it needed to make the products. And the stuff I got back really wasn't exactly what I was looking for. You have to be very, very detailed in order to get that information. So marrying those two together is just as important, because one example I give all the time is a lot of people make the mistake of having a lifestyle image of, like, the lifestyle model they have is like holding the product in their hand and like making eye contact with the camera or something like that. And the image itself doesn't actually show anything. There's literally no additional information that image would give you outside of the product packaging, right? So being just very intentional about what each one of the shots is showing and what it's trying to portray, and then what type of image is the best type of image to portray that, I think is a really valuable thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing too is, I think a lot of people, when they look at this, their mind is confined into, everyone's just looking at what is my competitor doing and how can I do better, right? But there's all of these different ways of creating media and creating content that might actually be much more relevant and relatable to the customer at the end of the day. Like, obviously, I follow you on Instagram, and I've seen some of your roommates, right? They've got the very, what you would call stereotypical, just beautiful Instagram shots, right? They're really heavily filtered. They look amazing. And what I think with that is, like, why am I, when I'm going through Amazon and I see a product that would be relevant to that age group or relevant to people who like those kind of images, why am I not seeing way more user-generated content or influencer-generated content where they're popping an Amazon product there and trying to get something that has the visual appeal or aesthetic? right, like why are we doing lifestyle shots that are consistently someone just holding the product in their kitchen and they're looking at the camera, right? And the thing is, at the end of the day, I would encourage people to disagree. I really just want to go and find out what is, if I go through every possible area on the listing, from infographics to a main image to a lifestyle image, what if we started playing around with concepts that are more abstract? I was reading a really interesting article the other day from, it was actually the chief operating officer, or the head of the creative director at 99 Designs. And, you know, you might say, hey, 99 Designs, it's not that cool of a company, but they've made a name for themselves doing some very interesting stuff. And one of the concepts that was interesting, it was like the top 20 trends for 2020. And one of them was called Retro-Modernism, or Retro-Futurism rather. And so imagine this, right? Imagine you're trying to sell a product, and then you're showing a product in a very modern environment, but then you're kind of also combining it with a retro environment. You have these retro themes. So maybe the person, you know, you have a home product that it's going to help you wash your dishes faster, and you're going to show someone in a modern kitchen, but then the outfit they're wearing is very, very retro. Things that at the end of the day, these are high level branding concepts, things that when someone sees it, it's like, oh, hey, my grandmother didn't have to, you know, go and use this product in the 1950s when she was going and cleaning her kitchen. But when you see the combination of these two things, it's interesting, it's unique. And I don't think anyone's really playing with these difficult, you know, with these kind of complex subjects, or these kind of complex ideas. And I think it would be really ridiculous for us to think that just because we're in this world, in this bubble of Amazon with what's working right now, that eventually these big companies, whether it's private equity companies that are dumping a lot of money into their brands, or whether it's brands that have been around for a long time, they've got the cash built up, they know they're a major player, and they want to build a moat around their brand. If you don't think that this high level creative direction and visual appeal and kind of this abstract appeal is going to come to all of these brands on Amazon, I think people are just thinking about what has worked over the years. And I think that's kind of stuff in this abstract thinking is coming, and it's coming very quick. I would like to kind of help drive that a little bit and see, maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but that's just my hypothesis. And I think we're getting better and better at creating amazing content and creating really, really visually rich items. I think this is what's coming next.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. So I'm really excited to get that thing rolling and get that project going. So definitely stay tuned to the Kenji ROI blog when it comes to that. And I believe the Pickfu blog will be getting some good stuff going out there. Well, thank you so much for coming on here, Anthony. There's a lot of valuable stuff here. And guys, definitely stay tuned for the next steps with this stuff. It's going to be very interesting. But if people want to reach out to you online, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess what I would encourage anyone as well is, if you were listening to this episode and you were thinking, hey, I've got an idea for maybe what different things I'd like to test, or I've always had questions about how could I create better kind of sizing graphics, or, you know, whatever it might be, feature graphics, they can reach out to me. I guess they can reach out to you as well. But my email is Anthony@Pickfu. This is going to be a long-term project. It's not something we're going to do overnight. I know Danny is ready, and his team is going to put in a lot of hard work and effort into this. And honestly, I think we're both okay with the thought that this is very new. It's very progressive, but that's kind of the intent. And, you know, maybe this is totally all wrong, and we're not going to find out anything good, and it's just going to be a waste of time. But I think we're going to get some pretty good insights here, and I'm excited. So if anyone wants to reach out, feel free.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here, Anthony. I really appreciate you sharing so much valuable information. And guys, if you want any of the links mentioned in this episode, we'll have those all listed in the show notes at kenjiroi.com/blog. And if you haven't already, go and leave a review for the podcast. You can do that very easily at ratethispodcast.com/free, ratethispodcast.com/FREE. It'll just open up whatever podcast app is on your phone, so you can easily leave a 5-star review. And if it's not 5 stars, then I typically cry myself to sleep. So make sure you do that, guys. And until next time, go out there and kick some ass.
For show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, visit kenjiroi.com.